Death acceptance means that you acknowledge that you will die one day and have found a way to comfortably live with knowing that fact. In this way, you're able to confront it by putting plans in place for the inevitable. While this certainly does take a certain amount of work and self-awareness, it's absolutely doable. But if you are death accepting or part of the death positive movement, you will also inevitably have to deal with others who assume some rather strange things about you. Before we go on, I will let you know that we post videos every Friday around topics of death and dying from a historical, practical and psychological point of view. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, consider subscribing. Now let's talk death acceptance myths. Death denial means you're morbid. The definition of morbid is suggesting an unhealthy mental state or attitude, unwholesomely gloomy, sensitive, extreme, etc. To which I say, wouldn't an unhealthy mental state be one where you spend your entire life constantly in fear and in constant worry about what's to come? Also, unwholesome would be not looking after your family, right? Which is the opposite of what writing a will and advance care directive does. Also, I'm pretty sure extreme is more sort of necrophilia level of things rather than doing some paperwork. Now let's be real here. If someone says that you are morbid, it's generally because they feel the topic is something that everyone should be uncomfortable with. They also usually assume that because you deal with it a lot, like say you run a YouTube channel on the topic, then you must like the topic. You have romanticized it, which is also the opposite of what death acceptance is. Death acceptance means you won't feel grief. Yes, I've reached the next plane of enlightenment. I now feel nothing. Yeah, nah. We've done plenty of videos on this channel about grief and it just doesn't work that way. But it does make it a bit easier. Let's explain. If you are someone who deals with death anxiety or worse, death denial, and suddenly a loved one dies, you're not going to be able to accept the loss has happened, let alone grieve for that loss. Being death acceptant simply means that you have acknowledged that death is a very real and necessary part of being a living being. So while your in death denial mother can't understand why her 96-year-old dad is dead, you accept that 96 years old is a pretty good innings for the old guy. And he was starting to fall apart because humans are not meant to last that long. So you can get on with grieving the loss of your granddad and the place that he had in your life. Meanwhile, it's going to take your mother substantially longer to reach that point. Indeed, she is likely to develop complicated grief, which, unlike regular grief, will take a lot of therapeutic intervention to recover from. Death acceptance means nothing about death scares you. No. I have particular historical death activities that freak me the hell out. And no, I'm not going to tell you because I know how trolls work. Similarly, Doughty said on her channel how she can deal with most death-related things, but cave diving corpses are still the one thing that really freaks her out. And she is essentially the head of the death positive movement. And just because you accept death is a natural part of life, it doesn't mean that if you pull up to a car crash and see a decapitated body, that shit ain't going to affect you. You're still human. But I think this is good for those who are dealing with death anxiety to know that just because you're making strides in moving forward with your anxiety, it doesn't mean that the end is a perfect fear-free zone. As long as you are moving forward, it's all good. Death anxiety means you want to die. If I had $1 for every time I heard this, it is a fun example of the modern day where people's thoughts go to the extreme. No, there is a big difference. Death acceptance means that you can enjoy living life without the crippling fear of death. It doesn't mean that you want to speed up the process. And with that in mind, if you're the parent of a morbid teenager, may I suggest watching this video next to get a bit of clarity on all that stuff. So there we are, a short positive one today to start the new year. Please like and subscribe and we'll see you next time. Now go talk death.